Greetings folks, and welcome to another 8/16/32-bit. I'm Rob, and today we're going to be taking a look at what exactly is a Europlatformer and whether it's fair to use that term as an insult. Now, you may be thinking, what do you mean insult? Well, if you watch a lot of YouTube retro gaming videos, you'll notice, especially from American-based YouTubers, the term Europlatformer is somewhat derogatory in its nature. It tends to imply that a game has little to no worth or playability simply based on the fact that it comes from Europe. But is this necessarily true, and is there really a difference between a platform game produced by a European developer and a platform game produced by an American or Japanese developer? Well, let's find out. So the first thing to do is define what is a Europlatformer. Well, that's quite difficult, but there are some things that generally people do seem to accept as being a Europlatformer in terms of style. Now, the main things seem to be a vast amount of collectible items on screen, like ridiculous numbers, as you can see here on Zool, and huge sprawling levels with a lot of verticality to them. Now, yeah, I've got Zool on screen here, and it's quite fair to say that Zool is probably one of the best examples of a Europlatformer that meets these criteria on the 16-bit systems. It's very colourful. There are huge numbers of collectibles in this game, literally hundreds upon hundreds of collectible items per level, and the levels are massive and sprawling. Yes, like most sort of, shall we call them, Eastern platformers, there's a lot of left to right running, but in Zool there is also a huge amount of verticality, and these levels are vast. You know, they're huge levels with a lot of exploration. But is this necessarily just the typical style for a European developed platform game? Well, not necessarily. For example, a game like James Pond 2 Robocod, whilst some of the levels are quite sprawling, not all of them are, it does feature a huge amount of collectibles, but it does feature some levels which are much more traditional in the straightforward left to right scrolling. But it's still distinctly a Europlatformer, because yes, it does feature those sprawling levels and huge amounts of collectibles lying around. But is it fair to say that that is a trait that is only held by Europlatformers? Well, I don't think it is. You see, the idea that a Japanese developed platform game is basically a left-to-right obstacle course, similar to the Mario titles, for example, doesn't always hold up. Take Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, when you first start playing Sonic the Hedgehog, certainly the first level or two are generally quite quick, solid, Mario-esque, left-to-right, high-speed obstacle courses. There's some verticality there on Green Hill Zone, but not a huge amount. However, the further into the game you progress, the more sprawling the levels become, the more verticality is added to the game in a very Europlatformery style, really. And yes, there are plenty of collectibles in the Sonic games. There are a huge number of gold rings knocking around the levels. And again, this is a very Europlatformery trope, but no one would describe any of the Sonic games as a Europlatformer. Now, I think I have to say here as well, another trait that seems to be ascribed to Europlatformers is their visual aesthetic. They tend to be very colourful, very cartoony, with a few exceptions such as titles like Gods. And it's a very European cartoony comic book style, as opposed to the obviously manga influenced visuals you get with Japanese games. Now, this isn't necessarily a purely defining trait, but there is a look that people associate with Euro platformers. Here you can see it in Flink. It's very Euro looking. This will not be a game that was produced by a Japanese studio. You can tell by the looks. Even an American studio wouldn't produce something like this. Their look will be much more akin to the kind of visuals you'd get from Marvel and DC, or maybe an attempt to ape a Japanese style. But, you know, Flink here is a very European looking game. And from Psygnosis, which is understandable, they had a distinct look, and that seems to define for a lot of people what Euro platformers look like. Now, the real tricky element for me is the way that Euro platformer is thrown around as a derogatory term. The implication that all Euro platformers are janky, terrible to play games with hideous controls. Now, Zool might not be the best playing platform game, but I'd hardly describe it as hideous and janky. Yes, Gods, which I've already mentioned, has a control scheme which can take a little bit of getting used to, but, you know, this is a game that was based off its original, which was produced for 16-bit microcomputers, where you had a joystick with one button, and translating the controls from those across to a joypad doesn't always work well. But, you know, there are plenty of Euro platformers, to use the phrase, that are excellent games. For example, Flink, whilst not the greatest platformer ever, is quite enjoyable and playable. Rayman, widely considered to be one of the best platform games around, is most definitely a Euro platformer. Yet, it doesn't fall into any of the negative tropes associated with Euro platformers, really. It's just a solid, enjoyable, playable platform game. And then you have games like Flashback, which is definitely a platformer. Yes, it has sprawling levels, but there's not a huge amount of things to collect. It has a much more measured pace. It doesn't have that manicness that you get from a Zool or a Robocod. And it plays excellently, but it is still what you would call a Euro platformer, being basically a platform game developed by a European developer. I think it's become easy to define Euro platformers as absolute trash, because a lot of the games that get ascribed to the Euro platformer school are kind of janky. You know, you have Ocean's Adams Family games on the Mega Drive and SNES, which, yeah, they're not the greatest. They do play a bit jankily. They're just not the greatest fun. Or you have games like the Otifants. Again, it just doesn't play well. But this isn't something that is strictly a Euro platformer thing. There are plenty of American and Japanese developed platformers such as Kid Chameleon, or some of the myriad of mascot platformers that came out in the early to mid 90s, where the game is just janky, but they don't get tarred in the same way, and you don't hear people saying, oh yeah, it's a American platformer in the same derogatory term. You know, Euro platformer has become a dirty word, and I don't think it's fair. Yes, there are certain tropes, but there are tropes that go with various genres. You know, nobody really criticises the tropes of Japanese shoot-'em-ups or American sports titles as something that's derogatory and negative about them. But Euro platformer has become an insult, and unfortunately that does mean that some really great games get lumped in with some truly terrible ones. Now, this is by no means a definitive deep dive into the Euro platformer, but I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Now, if you have something to say, please feel free to leave a comment down below. That's what the comment section's for. If you really do want to, enjoy this video and let people know, hit that like button. If you want to watch future videos from me, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell, because otherwise YouTube probably won't tell you I've got a new video out, because yay algorithm. You know, you can take out a membership to the channel here on YouTube or join me on my Patreon. You'll see the details at the end of the video. Again, big shout out to Leftback and Old Scott Retro here. You guys are awesome. And that's it for today's video. You know, I will see you on the next one. This is Rob. This has been 8/1632-bits brief look at Europlatformers, and I'll see you next time.